Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of Let's Find All the Warp Zones in Super Meat Boy. So today we're going to be doing Chapter 2, starting with 212 above. Now, those of you who have been watching the Let's Play know this is one of my least favorite levels of all time. So I actually did not have this warp zone until, I don't know, about 2 hours before I recorded this video. So what we're trying to do is, there's a warp zone right under that platform right there. But first, you have to get this key, and then wait for this key to fall, and then you can get into it. So this is what I mean when I say that they get a little bit more subtle and complex, because it really took me a long time to clue in that there was even a warp zone there. So we're doing another Game Boy themed warp zone here. And this one is actually pretty fun, and there's a lot of bandages, or I should say 2 bandages, I believe, on this one as well. So as I mentioned in the video description of my last one, if you're having trouble getting enough bandages to unlock characters, go look for more warp zones, or look through the warp zones if you haven't checked them for bandages, because there's one right there, and I just, well, totally skipped it over. Now this level is probably the toughest one you've seen in a warp zone yet, but it's really not that hard. And again, as usual, as soon as I say that, I bite the dust. But as long as you wall jump in the top vertex, so the corner right there, you can usually make it out before the saw gets you, as long as your timing is relatively good. Yeah, so that was the first warp zone. Well, technically there is a warp zone before that, but it contains Jill, so I'm planning on doing that one in the Jill video. Now here's a relatively obvious one on 215 Gallbladder. Basically, you just come up here and then go into this dilapidated office building. There's a more handheld color type game. I can't tell what system they're trying to emulate here, but I'm welcome to any suggestions as to what that is in the comments. It's another level that has a bandage on it, although I've already obtained it. It is on like the bottom left side, so you've got to go all the way over here, back down, and then climb back the other side. And when you don't have to do that, the level is much, much easier. All in all, these levels are actually pretty significantly increased in difficulty as compared to the warp zones in Chapter 1. But the warp zones in the Dark World are really where things start to get intense. Even, again, I die as soon as I start boasting a little bit. But, yeah, the Light World warp zones aren't even that bad when you get into, you know, Hell, the Rapture, etc. When they do get awful is in the Dark World, as early as Chapter 2. Although, I've got to be careful here to make sure I don't bite the dust and have to redo this whole section for you guys. This level actually is not super tricky, even though it has a lot of these tight jumping puzzles that are not really my forte. And Bandage Girl is trapped in another warp zone. Maybe it's the warp zone in the Dark World. So we're going to 2-5 Agent Orange for this warp zone. Best strategy for this one, I find, is to take Jill, because otherwise you can die a lot just through trial and error. So what you want to do is land on this platform, and then come under it and use her air brakes to push you into basically the bottom of this fan, so you get enough velocity to come up and get to the warp zone. Here we have another colored handheld. And these levels actually, I'm pretty sure are contributing to my ocular damage. Just hideous to look at, but again, yeah, I am not criticizing the art style that much. Ooh, that was a bad decision on my part. My general tactic for these ones is to leave one block at least standing. I think even on the second one here, the second floor, you can make it just by jumping from one platform, or from one side to the other. But on the third one, you absolutely need to land in the middle. Now, this level has kind of a history of causing me some problems. And that's a good example of what happens to me maybe 40% of the time. And that's just a cheap death. I think I might actually end up having to redo this warp zone. Which is good, maybe I'll bring some more insight to it. So yeah, you want to land in there, and then watch out, just don't get hit by it. That was poor timing on my behalf. Very poor timing on my behalf. But this is the last warp zone, so what the hell, let's give it another shot. Again, you just want to take Jill, and utilize that tactic to get under this, and then pushed up as high as you can. It really makes things a lot easier. I mean, I've done it with Meat Boy, it's definitely possible, but it's much, much easier with Jill, and you save yourself a lot of time that way. These levels actually look a lot like the Commander Video style levels in his warp zone, which I hope to show off pretty shortly. I gotta make sure I don't get flustered here. That's what the game wants. Alright, so far so good. No problem. Again, if you have patience, these levels are not too bad. I was just getting a little bit flustered after I got killed here. It's playing with my emotion instead of my logic. You gotta be very cold and calculating in Meat Boy. You can't just go with your heart. There we go. Alright, we move on to the last level. Another level that contains a bandage. So again, can't stress that enough. If you don't have enough bandages to unlock characters and you're wondering where to find them, go find some more warp zones. There's usually at least one in every warp zone. Actually, most of the time, two. So, you know, you pick up 5 warp zones, that's an extra 10 bandages. Alright, so that's all of the warp zones in Chapter 2. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.